Punita Kumar Sinha as well joins in the show right now. Punita, hi, morning. How have you been holding up?
Good, good. I'm stuck in Boston. So I've been watching closely a lot more of
Yeah.
what's happening in both India and the US.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when it comes to New York, things don't seem to be coming to a standstill there at all, and no improvement much there. As is the case with India as well, Punita. And, like Ramdev was rightly highlighting, that he's surprised with the rebound that we've seen in April from the March lows. In fact, we've recovered almost about 30% rather, excluding, of course, today's fall. Has this market rebound caught you also unaware, Punita? And are you surprised with the things on ground, the economic data points, and the markets completely singing their own tune?
Yeah, I think, of course, markets do anticipate and lead the economic recovery, but I think we are far from an economic recovery right now. I think, in fact, the quarterly numbers that are coming out aren't even going to reflect the full extent of the lockdown, because the lockdowns really in most countries only started at the last week of March. So the second quarter calendar year is going to probably be even worse. And the economic data that has come out, I don't expect that. I mean, I think another quarter of pain on the economic side is still going to be seen. And in previous recessions, and if you go back, all the way to the 1900s, where you have data in the US, it takes about 12 to 18 months for economies to bottom out and start recovering. And same thing for about the markets. It's about usually 12 months or so. So I expect that in the next 6 to 8 months, unless there's a vaccine, unless there is some clear drug that really can address the COVID symptoms and remove the fears in the minds of people, I think there could be volatility, because we will have periods where things will look like they're normalizing, and then we might again slip back into a period of some concern as the cases might again spike. So I think it's going to be volatile. And yes, I think the markets rebounded a lot, perhaps a little bit ahead of themselves. But, the extent of the fiscal stimulus is just staggering in other countries, barring India. I mean, other countries have had enormous amount of fiscal stimulus, much more than in the past.
Punita, that's the other thing. While no one's expecting Indian government to go the Fed way, but do you think the answer and the next cushion for the market could come in when the government chooses to announce the economic stimulus package, which everyone's been waiting for?
Yeah, I think, if you look at, of course, the data that India's fiscal stimulus has been one of the lowest, even versus its own history. I think India has had higher fiscal stimulus even in 2008 and in previous recessions, and this time it's a little around 1%. Countries in UK and US and all, we are in the 15%. Most countries under 10 to 15% of GDP. Of course, that means, a lot of debt and easy money and printing is going to cause its own set of problems going forward. But I think the fiscal stimulus in India has been on the lower side. And while the RBI has done a decent amount of easing, there is much more expected right now on the fiscal stimulus, and everybody's waiting to see when that comes.
What are the sectors, Punita, that you're eyeing as an opportunity, perhaps even with a longer term point of view? Everyone's been focusing very strongly on pharma. Consumer seems to be taking a back seat. How are you weighing up the pockets of opportunity?
No, I think that they're going, there is obviously, given the market volatility, you're going to probably have a balanced portfolio of some defensive names and some potentially stocks that have been really beaten down and could be the ones that might benefit from any recovery whenever that comes. So yes, I mean, I think in the past also I mentioned healthcare, pharma. There's going to be a lot of capacity that'll be required given this pandemic across the world. There's going to be innovations required. So these are sectors the sector is going to see investment at all levels. And so it's a problem. And also, I think as India is seen as another alternative source to China, whether it's chemicals, pharmaceuticals, any of those sectors will see some kind of shift to India. And so we will see investment happening in those sectors. That should eventually drive earnings as well. Of course, valuations have to be watched because some of these sectors have performed, but I think they'll probably keep performing reasonably well. But then there are other companies that have been really beaten down, some of them on the consumer discretionary side, and some other mid and small caps where the valuations are looking attractive, but of course the earnings are so uncertain that one doesn't know when the recovery might happen. So you have to keep an eye on those, because as and when any of the COVID sort of relief starts and the economic situation starts looking up, these sectors and these companies might be the ones to bounce because they've been the ones that have been the most penalized.
Okay. What do you perhaps perceive as attracting foreign investor interest back into India? Are they wary? Do you feel that currently the mood is weighing heavy, or is it more to do with global factors? Do you see India emerging as an attractive destination for investments, because that's what the government still seems to be betting on?
I think, India's handled this COVID crisis quite well in terms of controlling the number of cases and the spread. I'm just sitting here in the US, and our lockdowns are just not as severe as the lockdowns that you've had in India. And here, people are a little bit more casual, and the spread has therefore been quite high. We can go to supermarkets, we can go for walks. Like today I was out on a walk and there were tons of people walking, and we're supposedly in a lockdown or what they call a stay-at-home order. Whereas in India, I think you have contact tracing. Here, due to privacy reasons, you never know who's had COVID around you. Nobody will even shut down the stores if somebody's had COVID. And the employees also don't know if another employee's had COVID. So they're still focusing a lot more on privacy, whereas in India, so the situation's being managed well, and that's being appreciated, I think, globally, even by investors. The second thing is, of course, there's a lot more confidence now in India compared to China. There's a lot of anti-China sentiment building up, and that should help India as well. Of course, there is concern that India doesn't have the capacity to do a big fiscal thrust that is required. So there is concern that the economy may not do that well, and it was not, growing that rapidly to begin with. So as long as the economy and the economic data is reasonably okay, then the other worry is what happens to India's rating and the currency. And so I think foreign investors generally, I would say, not so concerned on India. If they're concerned, they're generally concerned globally. And there might be more shift towards India eventually in the long term. And I think so India could be a long-term beneficiary. I don't know about the short term, given everybody's kind of right now, I think everybody's really in the US is more focused on the US because the stimulus has been just enormous, as I said, and the markets have recovered very sharply. So there has been no urgency to kind of move out of the US into other markets.
So Punita, yet again, do you think the May seasonality will come into effect? Should one sell in May and go away, and not even go away, just stay locked in?
Well, right now, of course, the May looks like the reopening time. All countries are looking to reopen rather than, go away. Everybody's been kind of locked up. So I don't know about the seasonality effect. I do think that in previous recessions, previous corrections, markets have fallen a lot more, and there hasn't been a V-shaped recovery. As I said, since there has been no vaccine or cure that is imminent, it would still take 6 months unless something really good comes on that horizon. there could be another dip down in the markets. Now, whether that means that'll happen in May or August or September, I don't know. But it all depends. We are very dependent on the health side of the. This is a first time where the health and the economic are intersecting quite a lot. So we have to really watch the data that's coming up from our scientists and on the health side, and that will determine the mood going forward. Because if things, don't get cured, then we may see ourselves in another kind of slow or some form of lockdowns again happening in the fall. I don't know, but that's what, at least in the US, they are warning against that.
Sure. Okay. Punita, great to have you on the show as always. Stay safe and try avoiding those walks. Stay at home as far as possible. Good to chat with you.